Hi, welcome back to the Gabster channel. My name is Gabby and we are here today to test this Fuji GFX 100S2. We're going to put it to the paces. We're going to test it with a real model in real environment. Basically do a shoot like you would probably do sometime, whether you are a wedding photographer or you're a landscape photographer. I'm also going to show you how to adapt other lenses. Yes, you can put like Canon lenses, Nikon lenses and Sigma lenses on this Fuji, and they actually work quite well. I'm going to show you how to do that. And other thing, we're going to compare the dynamic range, the autofocus. I'm going to show you, I used to have the original Fuji GFX 100S and how it compares to the older one, whether if you're buying one, should you buy the used one, which you could save a lot of money on, should you buy the new version 2, or whether you should buy the big camera, which is the 102, which is a little bigger and slightly more expensive one, whether it's worth it to upgrade all that. So all these things we're going to try to check out, and we're going to check all these features of this camera on a real model. I've got my friend here, Lemon, she's a professional model, and she was gracious enough to come and help me with this video. We are here, we've been up since early morning at 4:30 trying to catch the sunrise, trying to catch those early sun rays when you can see those really dark blacks and really harsh lights, and that's a true dynamic range, not the one you see in the charts, but the one you see in real life. So here is the Fuji still, and check out the detail in the sun rays and the mountains, her skin tones and the rocks. And here we can see the Canon R5, similar photos around the same time, a lot less mountain detail, and here you can see them also side by side, and you can see the rocks are the same color, but the sky is much brighter on the Canon and less detail. And here on the mountains area you can see a lot more detail on the mountains on the Fuji versus the Canon. So all in all, the Fuji has way better dynamic range. And here's another scene taken roughly around the same time, and let's check out the detail. Here's the still on the Fuji, and you could see the amount of detail in the mountains, the rocks, the sky, the rays, her skin tones. I'm showing you some real unedited images here, not some charts of different shades of gray on the chart. It's different when you're in real life with real people, real nature. Getting up at 4:30 in the morning to catch those early sun rays and having a great model paid off big time. Autofocus. Unlike version 1 of the 100S, version 2 has way better autofocus. It seems to lock really nice on the eye, and once it latches, it wouldn't let go. And when the model turned around, the focus hovered around the same area and actually regained focus after that. And the results were pretty good. There was quite a lot of keepers and hardly any that didn't focus well. And here you see another example of the same thing. My version 1 of the 100S sat on the shelf unused, ended up selling it pretty much brand new because of this autofocus problem. With the version 2, there is no problem, it works great. Now, if you are a landscape photographer, you're better off buying the version 1 because you're not in a hurry to shoot too many pictures. A couple frames more per second is not a big deal, and autofocus is not going to make a huge difference. Full frame lenses work pretty well on the GFX. You would think that they wouldn't cover the circle, but they actually do. Hardly any darkness on the corners, sometimes a tiny bit, but not a lot. And they seem to darn focus pretty decently, especially the Sigma 40mm. We'll get to that. But here an example with the Canon 85mm 1.2. And you could see that it's making a lot of noise, but it's actually focusing reasonably all right. So this is again the 16-35. And this is shot at 35mm. The Canon 16-35 struggled the most, but managed alright with a bit of patience. I'm using the keep-on adapter here from EF to GFX, and I'll put a link for it in the description below. Notice just a tiny darkness in the corners, but not a lot. Depending on what you're shooting, it may or may not bother you. My favorite of all the adapted lenses is a Sigma 40mm 1.2. This lens is truly amazing. It's very sharp and very well made. And there was hardly any darkening around the corners, just a tiny bit, which is easily corrected in post if that's bothering you. The screen can flip up and down and side to side and comes in very handy when you're doing those low shots or you're moving it to the side. And here you can see how the camera tilts, and also a very fine example on how to risk your $5,000 camera all to get that great shot. We often forget how hard models work. They take a lot of risks sometimes just to get that good shot. And often they use all these muscles that usually you don't use, and they end up having lots of sore muscles and aches the next day. Here I was trying to see how the camera does in sun and shade, and it actually did reasonably well. Mind you, the sun one, it wasn't super harsh, but still it did fairly well. Another example of good dynamic range. And the next question most people ask, would it be worth upgrading to version 2 if you have version 1? I'll just quickly tell you some of the differences. Version 2 is a tiny bit lighter, 1.9 pounds instead of 2 something. It's got 8 stops of IBIS instead of 6. I don't know if that's really true or not. The autofocus tracking, that's definitely a big, huge improvement if you're into like weddings or models. If you're into landscapes, not a big deal. It's got lower light performance maybe than the other one, than version 1. The viewfinder have 5.7 million versus 3 million dots, which is a little bit better. It has the same sensor as the 102, but it's slightly different sensor than version 1. So the minimum ISO is 80, and they claim to have a slightly better dynamic range. I think they're about the same myself, having owned both of them. And the version 2 can shoot 7 frames per second instead of 5, which could come in handy if you're doing some minor sport. Now, should you get the bigger camera, the 102 instead? Well, the differences are, again, a little minor. So, for example, the 102 will shoot 8 frames per second instead of 7, so big deal, 1 more frame per second. The viewfinder, this is when there's a good difference. It has 9.4 million dots versus 5 million. Frankly, I'm very happy with the viewfinder on the S2. I had no issues with that whatsoever. Now, the good thing about the 102 is that you can have a tilting viewfinder. That's kind of cool. And the other thing is that it does 8K video instead of 4K. And it also costs $2,000 more. If you want to see more about my model, Lemon, she actually helped me on one of my videos about different songs to listen to your hi-fi system. And I'll link to that video in the corner up here. If you want to see my review about the Canon 200 to 800 millimeter lens, which is an amazing wildlife lens, I'll put a link for it in this corner here. I'll have a speaker in this middle part. In case you want to subscribe to my channel, just click on it. That would really help me. I hope to see you again. Take care.